time. All right. So when I was a kid, my mom named me after Henry Tudor's grandfather because she was a super English, especially history buff. And she would take us to England, and I ran around a bunch of castles pretending I had a sword. And then I found out that Drachenwald runs around castles with swords. And, you know, not just in England, but all over, as I understand it. And so I have had an envy-hate relationship with the Kingdom of Drachenwald ever since I learned it existed. And today, this morning, on Fighting the World, we have two of the people I envy, hate, love here with us. So again, I'm Wistric.
I'm Bruce.
And this is Fighting the World, Drachenwald edition.
All right, so we're going to open up by
Feels like there's drum music there.
We really do. We need some production value. We've been talking about this, but we're not quite there yet.
We should get production value.
Hey, look, we have backgrounds now. You used to be able to just see my cats.
I'd have to be, yeah.
So the first thing I want to do is have both of our panelists introduce themselves. Where are you from mundanely? What is the name of the group in the SCA? And who are you in general? I'm going to start with Countess Anna, who has graciously joined us from the northernmost part of the world.
Yeah, and picking on the northernmost part of the world, I really need to make sure that everybody realizes that I am the most northern master of defense of the known world. So there, important things first. Mundanely, I am currently in the northern parts of Sweden. I originate from the neighboring country, southern parts of Finland, where I joined the SCA as soon as the SCA came into Finland. And I had the privilege of serving as the founding baroness of Arnimetsä, which is whole of Finland. And after I had stepped down, I sort of took the refugee route and emigrated to Nordmark, where I have been living happily ever after.
I have heard the name Nordmark before, so I'm gonna hold on to that because the Polish name just went just a little bit with me.
I believe that was a Finnish name.
It was a Finnish name, actually.
Finnish name.
Arnimetsä. And the fun thing is actually that Arnimetsä, it means really translated ancient for woods. And my SCA after-name is Anna von Urwald. Urwald being the German translation of the same word.
That's awesome. That is actually awesome. All right, and I'm going to jump over to Alexandre. Same questions.
I am Alexandre. There are, as far as the fencing stuff goes, my main claim to fame is not that I'm the northernmost mod in the world, but I am the premier white scarf of the Outlands, which means that for those of you who are keeping count of such things, I am the non-Stjorn white scarf in history. When the first white scarf treaty was signed, that day I was made the premier of the Outlands white scarf. And there is a non-zero probability that without that, we would not be where we are today with respect to the MOD and all that. So I will take that. I am currently living in the Principality of Insula Draconis, which is the British Isles plus Ireland plus Iceland in the Kingdom of Drachenwald. Insula Draconis being the Isles of the Dragon. So, and I'm in a shire there because we do not actually have any baronies whatsoever in the Principality. And John Wistric's point about the whole love, hate, and cool thing in castles. I won my coronet tournament in a castle in Wales and was made Prince of the British Isles in a castle in Wales. And that was, in fact, pretty damn cool.
Oh my goodness. So we're going to have to delve into that a little deeper. I'm definitely, because, so for anyone who's joining us, background, I was supposed to go to that castle in Wales this summer before COVID happened. So my love-hate relationship has blossomed into something dark and fiery. But I kind of wanted to jump into our most normal question that we ask. I think I have asked it 9 out of 10 panels here on Fighting the World. To both of our panelists, what does a typical melee look like in Drachenwald? Whether it be a practice or an event, like how big is it? What type of tactics do you see? Do you see tactics? And what type of scenarios do you guys run? I'm gonna start with Anna, and let's do like a typical practice melee and then a typical event melee. What do those look like?
Well, I'd say that perhaps the most used practice melee is what we call a snowball.
Okay.
Everybody starts as their own team. And once you kill somebody, that person becomes part of your team.
Fun.
Until the person that brought him into the team is killed, in which case they are free again. And it is sometimes very interesting to try to keep track of whose team am I on. And so, but eventually it might turn out so that there is only one team on the field. And you might guess that we are not 20 persons at fighter practice. I think I actually had I have a wonderful picture here of our local practice.
You should be able to share screen now.
I am. This is all the fences of our local practice, and actually the lady being stabbed at the moment there, she's a visitor.
Oh.
And just to tell you how lucky I am where I live, this is my back garden, and the 2 people in the front, the black fellow with not much hair on top, and then the lady stabbing the other lady, they are my neighbors. Okay. So we every now and then, when at 8 o'clock, I get an SMS. In 15 minutes in the garden.
Oh my gosh, I miss practice so much. I see this photo.
And
So-
yeah, with you, having 3 people within the next 2 houses, that's a little jealous.
Just a little. So
So much jelly of Drachenwald.
So when when you are having a practice with this lot of people, it's easy to do a snowball.
Nice.
How frequently does that happen?
Pardon me?
How frequently do you do that?
Well, considering the fact that my latest fencing practice was a while back, well, every now and then. Back in 2000, it was more frequent when I was living close to Stockholm, and I attended the practice in Stockholm. Then we did it quite a lot. We might have been up to 10 people.
Quick aside, work sent me to Stockholm for a meeting once, and I packed my fencing kit except for my sword, and got to show up to the practice and be like, "Can I borrow a sword?" And got to play with a lot of about a half dozen people there.
This is very usual in Drachenwald. If I'm traveling to the Alps or wherever, I'm just saying, I'm coming. Could I possibly borrow a sword, or do I have to kill you all with my dagger?
We're going to actually have to touch on that a little bit, because I've heard a bit about the travel issue in Drachenwald and leaving stuff on trains, potentially. So I definitely want to touch on that a little bit more, about how much interplay there is between your practices. Thank you so much for sharing such an awesome photo and an awesome excerpt of what your practices look like up in the northernmost part of the kingdom. I'm going to jump over to Alexandre and ask, what does a typical melee look like in Drachenwald, and talk about your local practice, and then we'll shift into talking about some of the bigger events.
I, as far as local practice goes, I am trying to think about whether we've ever had a melee practice. And it is possible that we have, but if we have, and it was more than a 2-on-2 or maybe a 3-on-3, I would be astonished. Yeah, this is something that I was thinking about as we were getting ready for this show. Our kingdom is bigger than your kingdom and smaller than your kingdom. In terms of population, Drachenwald is really pretty small. On the other hand, we have Anna, who is in the north of Sweden. And you can look at that on a map, and that's north. And then we have a group in South Africa. So what we have is a relatively small population spread across an enormously wide area. Our practice is probably, as far as rapier goes, is probably the largest and most active rapier practice in Insulae Draconis. There was one point a year and a half ago where, if you feel generous, you could say that we had 15 people under arms at practice. Now, 4 of those were youth fencers under this. A couple of those were youth fencers under the age of 14. And at least 1 or 2 of them were new and not authorized. So yeah, there you go, right?
So for those of us who don't necessarily know the local geography, what is Insulae Draconis?
So, yeah, as we're talking, another interesting factoid for all of you stateside SCA people is that Drachenwald is not a primarily Anglophone kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
The first language of most people in Drachenwald is Swedish. So if you're looking at that map, which Wistric is pulled up for you, off to your right, you can see Sweden and Finland, which is respectively the Principality of Nordmark and the Barony of Arnhem-Metza. Then if you look left.
This is where Anna is.
Anna, so like way up there at the tippy top, somewhere in that area is Anna.
Yeah, I am actually.
And also
I'm just by the sea in the very top.
Oh, wow.
No. On the left,
On the left.
The inner sea between Nordmark and Arnhem-Metza.
And for anybody who doesn't know, the North American part of this is really not to scale.
Well, there you go.
Little North American centric there.
So, as Anna said, Anna is a barony which covers all of Finland. Nordmark is a principality which covers all of Sweden. And then Insulae Draconis is a principality which covers those 3 islands off to the left. So that's us. Then when you go down, what you get is what's sometimes called the Frankmark. You got a barony. Germany is essentially a barony called Knight's Crossing, which is in there. And then way down at the bottom of Africa, there's another group. And then you got a few groups that you can sort of see drifting off there in the Middle East and so on, with various levels of activity. But
connected to military bases?
Typically, that's how they start. That is no longer so much the case. In most places, there was, I mean, if we go back into the history, and Anna can correct me if I'm wrong, but the sort of the injection of the SCA into Europe and so on came by way of the military bases. but the groups that only stayed on the military bases really started to suffer when the U.S. military presence diminished. And so I believe the Knights Crossing had trouble there for a little while because they hadn't gotten out into the vernacular, if you want to call it that, as much. ID managed to dodge that bullet in some ways because some people very specifically made a point of trying to recruit those who were in the area. Because otherwise, I mean, you're out of luck. And we still have a reasonable number of military personnel in ID in particular. I don't think so much in the rest of the kingdom, but in ID in particular, we still do, which can be enormously frustrating on a lot of ways because it means we get people, they're here for 3, 4, 5 years, and then they're gone again. Mm-hmm. You know, we lost one of our really good, well-respected, well-trusted fencers just a week or so ago, a month or so ago, because she'd come over to do a degree, finish the degree, back over to the States. So, so our practice is, if not the largest of the rapier practices in Insulae Draconis on a regular basis. And even in the before times, if we had 8 or 10 people suited up and fighting, that was an exceptional occurrence. So,
and Anna, you know, where do you see people come from in? I think these countries that did not have so much of an original military, or at least American military presence. Anna?
Yeah, well, in Sweden and Finland, we do not have any American military presence. We're pretty much natives.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you find the SCA? Because you mentioned that you were one of the founding baronesses.
Yeah.
So
I happened to have.
Yeah,
well, it was back in the days when internet wasn't so easily available, but I happened to be lucky enough to have a brother who was very much into everything that happened in the early HIT world, and there was this fellow who lived in Oulu, in northern part of Finland, who had been an exchange student in the America, if I remember correctly, and he had gotten in contact with the SCA there and thought it was fun, and then found out that there is actually an active group in Sweden. So he then through his contacts on the university pre-internet type of thing, whatever you can call that, they started to put up a group with the support of then Barony of Nordmark. And yeah, when I saw that what he was doing, I want to do that too. So
I think that's how a lot of us ended up here. So that's actually a really good history lesson, and it tells us a bit about the logistics and some of the logistical concerns of playing in Drachenwald. We spoke to Lokak last week, and they said some very similar things about it being both the smallest and the largest kingdom you've ever seen. So I can't wait to see how things translate over and what's similar and what's different. So I've asked about your local practices, and it sounds like you have pretty decent practices, whether it's small and super tight knit and happens just about any time, or one of the larger practices in the kingdom. It doesn't sound like melee is much of an emphasis other than to have fun. Hearing about the snowball tournaments makes me really happy. So I want to open this up to both panelists, but I'm going to start with Anna, and you guys can play off of each other. What does melee look like at events? Is it something you typically do, or is it reserved for only large events? What does rapier melee look like? Anna, you first.
Yeah, basically rapier melee can look like whatever. It's whenever we are enough of fencers on the field and decide that this is what we want to do, we do it. basic point is always, let's have fun. A lot of our tourneys, we do so that we have fun. Basically, it might be that it's the people watching who then get to pick the winner. And usually, you know, we don't want to bother people to do the list mistressing thing or whatever. We just decide, here we are, all the fencers, and let's just challenge each other. And pretty much every time it then escalates to the fact that, yeah, let's go together and challenge those together, so that it becomes sort of a mini melee, because there are like 2 or 3 people fencing 2 or 3 people together. But if you quit sharing your screen, I have a picture of yet another traditional melee tournament type of thing that that we do in Drachenwald. This is the Circle of Treachery. Wonderful, isn't it, Alexandre? It is. Everybody starts by the on the outlines. When Leon is called, you are immediately engaged to everybody except the 2 persons right next to you. Your initial contact cannot be to the person standing right next to you. And you are allowed to do little treaties. Well, like 2 ladies on the left here, we have obviously decided to get rid of some people first, until we then perhaps in a critical moment turn against each other. And a lot of backstabbing, luring, wonderful things. I could tell you stories. but this is one typical melee. Another one is that...
So what we don't...
Yes, Alexandre.
Go ahead, Anna.
No, I was just going to go to the most important and, what would I say, bloody serious war that we have annually, which is the Knäckebröd War. The whole idea is about that in Sweden and in Finland there is this really hard dried rye bread, and some people put the butter on the wrong side of it, the bottom side. Whereas all clever, wise people know that, of course, you put it on the top side, which is the more holy one. The holy
side.
Or the flat side. The flat-siders are completely wrong, but every year we have to have this war about which is the correct side. And this war is done in heavy fighting. It is in fencing, archery, whatever, and all the war points are then put together, and we see who wins. Often this scenario starts so that one of the parties, the flat or the holy siders, are happily sitting on the ground having a picnic, when then the other guys come and burst in and say that you're doing that wrong, sorry, and just we carry it out from there.
Oh my gosh, I want to bring that to Penn.
Yeah, I think that, you know, I don't know what the melees are like in the rest of the world, because I've only done fencing in Drachenwald.
We'll come to that. That is a question. We will come to that. But I have to ask, so how large are the sides at the Knäckebröd or the bread war? How large are your sides? How big is that melee?
Yeah, this picture is actually from the event. It is a week-long event in the southern Sweden. It is a camping event, and I think that this is pretty much all the fencers, give or take a few, that attended that event.
How many? Where do you see people coming from? Do they come from all across Drachenwald, or is this
all across Drachenwald? Yes.
Okay.
South Africans tend to come very seldom, but even they have been here. I was very lucky a long time ago when I was queen, that I was crowned at the Drachenwald 10-year celebration, which was in a castle in Germany, and I had my fencing champions tournament there, and picked Guntram, who was from Adamastor from South Africa. So he served as my champion during the reign.
they got to have their champions fight in a castle.
Yeah.
An
Oh, yeah.
actual castle.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, one of the things that, I mean, the biggest melee that I've seen over here is going to be 10 or 12 on a side, something like that. And so there's sort of three kind of big, what you might think of stateside as sort of big war events. One in Finland, one in Sweden, and one in Wales. And that's where you get sort of the big, by Drachenwald standards, melee events. But you're talking between 20 and 30 people on a total. Heavy, in ID at least, that's heavy or rapier. I think Double Wars and Cudgel probably get more heavies than that. But ID has a very strong rapier culture.
Well, but that's still melee, and that's kind of what we wanted to talk about, is how it differs from what we do here. Wistric and I are having kind of a side conversation in our outline of questions on things to follow up on, and we're like, how do they win the negotiation war point? Do they even negotiate?
See, here's the thing. It's not Pennsic. And because it's not Pennsic, one of the things is scenarios are few and far between. The melee scenario is these 5 people are on this side and these 5 people are on this side, and we will fight until there's no people left on one side or t'other.
And that's part of what we wanted to touch on here, because we find with smaller kingdoms that either they go very scenario heavy because they get to play a game with that few people to try to logistic, or they go no scenarios at all and do Valhallas and snowballs and more fighting, more sword all the time, sword. So we wanted to see what the pulse of Drachenwald was with regard to that.
And for those, I think, not Pennsic committed kingdoms, a dozen people at an internal kingdom war event is pretty standard. It's what we get at Meridia's for a lot of our, for our 2 within Kingdom Wars.
You guys are hitting it on the head for us, because we want to show people what rapier melee is like, not at Pennsic.
Yeah, this all started from what did they do aside from Pennsic? It's not Pennsic out there.
I think what's driving it.
This is great.
I think what's driving it in ID is that, at Raglan, we might get 10 on a side. But
what
if
is
we
Raglan?
Raglan is one of the 3 big events. The three sort of big kingdom war-y events is Raglan Fair in Wales, Double Wars in Sweden, and Cudgel War in Finland. Those are the 3.
Can we do a little bit more info on Raglan?
We can.
Both Americans are like, this is the one at the castle.
Yeah, this is Raglan Castle, right?
That is, and I have pictures of Raglan that I can show you.
Okay.
Please. So basically, we've gone through our questions here with what's the largest event, which we've heard about the Bread War, and we've heard about Raglan, and now we've heard about Cudgel. We've talked about what your melee practices look like and how small they can be and how large they can be. Now we want to talk about what's the coolest event and why is it the coolest event?
Y'all should check this out.
I was just laughing at us. I'm sorry.
This picture here.
You got coronated in a ruin?
I did. I got pictures of that too. But so this is that's the front gate at Raglan Castle, and that's the picture that I did like the first year that I was here. It's like, yeah, you know what? There you go. But as far as these things go. There's also, we're talking, yeah.
I
So-
hijacked you.
So here's
I was looking
bridge
for a
battle at
picture of
Raglan.
Rapier on that bridge because
here's a thing. So here's one thing. At Raglan in particular, if we have a bridge battle, you know what we do? We fight on a bridge over
Over a moat.
a moat
yeah.
in a castle.
And if we want to have a gate battle,
Yeah, we do it in a
we
gate
actually use the gate.
of a castle.
And that bridge is not like 5 feet above the ground beneath it.
No,
No.
it's safe. There's moat filled with water underneath.
Yeah.
It's fine.
And Anna, give me the screen back.
Okay.
We could sit here
Oh,
all morning and look at these.
So this one here is let's see, wait, did I get the right one up? No, I didn't. Hold on. Let me see, which one do I want? I want that one. There we go.
See, at least I got up what I wanted.
So there. So that, by the way, that is like one of the biggest heavy weapons, rattan melees, that you're going to see in Insulae Draconis, right there. That's the size of stuff that we're talking about.
Okay.
Now, what we do get in some other stuff is, because we're in a castle, we do get stuff like this. And I think Bruce has seen this, but I'm going to show it off anyway, because I think it's freaking hilarious.
Hey, it's not about me. This is about our audience. That's why I'm having you define things that I was totally going to go to until we had a pandemic.
Yeah. So,
Oh, hi, Lori.
and there's my wife. Hello, wife.
Have you fed the cats?
No, I have not.
Okay.
So this here, so there, that's the bridge
Oh,
that we fight on. So
how
that gives
high
you-
is that?
Well, you can look at that. That's going to be 20 or 30 foot. So don't fall. And that's the courtyard. And yes, that's Lin Manuel Miranda tweeting about us.
And like if you go looking on the internet, there he got video of yeah.
So that's the inner courtyard. And what we're doing here is one of our prize plays for advancement in our Academy of the Rapier. And we're doing it here in the courtyard at Raglan Castle.
So I have a couple of questions with this. What does this change logistically? So instead of hay bales, instead of having to build your scenarios, you guys go out and you find a gate, or you find a moat, or you find a courtyard, or you find an alleyway. And it seems to me like, because of the number of people, you have a little bit better of a simulation of like a group of guards or a group of whatever. But are there any logistical concerns? Like, are you worried about denting this ruin? Are there any things you have to take into consideration when you're marshaling or having a
Did you break
marshal
the castle?
there?
We
Yeah.
we usually at Raglan, the first day or two at Raglan, there's a marshal's meeting where the discussion is, please don't damage the castle. It's mostly focused on the heavy side, because it's a lot easier to do things like put your pole arm around the wall and lever it and stuff like that. But generally speaking, and then there's the other discussions about things like, even by SCA standards, the footing in a lot of these places is not so good. So be careful about that. And there's a picture somewhere, which I could probably find for you if I tried, but it's an overhead shot of one of our melees at Raglan. And you can't quite see it from the picture, but they're fighting on a little greensward with little bits of ruined wall on the sides. And what you can't see is that if they trip over that ruined wall and fall, they're taking a header into the moat.
That's awesome.
So,
So cool.
so it's that kind of thing. But so when we do quote unquote scenarios, it typically tends to be this is going to be the bridge battle. We're going to fight until one side's dead. We're just going to do it on the bridge. Yeah. And then this one is the courtyard battle. And we're going to fight until one side of the other is dead. We're just going to do it in the tiny little courtyard with the wall on one side and the moat on the other side. You know, it's not that there aren't necessarily scenarios. It's just that they're not the default, because at least as a general principle, we don't get the numbers often enough that a complicated scenario is something that people have practiced for or really need. You know, the mere fact that you've got 8 people on a side is enough novelty. We don't also need complicated rules plus 17 special flags, 5 of which need to be held to win this, 13 of which are surrounded by bees, and 2 of which are guarded by a leopard in the woods. You know.
What, you don't need a binder to explain your scenarios on these really awesome ruins that we definitely just saw a picture of?
Do not get me started about the negotiations when I was Synchronized.
We will touch on that in a couple of questions. I promise.
That's not.
No, we will. We need to talk about this. Because it's something that's different. So I know that scenarios aren't the default. And I understand that you have like a marshals meeting about preparing, and there are some considerations for marshals in stopping people before they go ass over tea kettle into the moat. Do you guys ever find additional setup you need to do? Do you need to put down hay bales or ropes or anything? Anna just jumped up and was really excited, so I'm gonna let her take this one. Is there anything, when you're not having events at these really wicked cool sites, is there any setup you have to do for your melee? And it looks like Anna has an illustrative point here, so I will let her take it away.
Welcome to Council War. More specific, the pirate party at the Council War. There is Council War is a week-long camping event by a lake. Hopefully, usually on the lakeside in sunny Finland. You can see the lake there on the background. This is a list field, of course. In the pirate party, the tournament, it's alternating with fencing and heavy. So you can see the heavy fighters behind the list field there waiting for their turn, while the huge amount of 4 fencers are just, the lay-on has just been called. The scenario starts by there is a table, and on the table, everybody places their weapons. Then we turn our backs to the table. And then the marshals go there, maybe move the weapons, take some away, put something else, whatever. There's, for example, a pineapple, which is a valid weapon. And once the lay-on is called, you get to turn and pick whatever you get off the table and then start fighting. And if all goes well, it ends like this, me waving the pineapple and the sword and everybody else lying dead on the ground.
What did you do with the pineapple?
At this particular bout, I obviously did not throw it at somebody because I'm still holding it, but I just might have hit somebody in it or jammed it onto somebody's face.
Wait, you were allowed to throw the pineapple?
Well, this particular thing, we did not call this fencing tournament. It was an arts and sciences display. Because we did it with the cut and thrust rules, since that is the preferred style in Arnimetsa was at the time. So it was an arts and sciences display of how fencing might have been done in a...
You can see everybody's gauntlets.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you know it's cut and thrust.
I love the pineapple and the idea of an offensive pineapple.
and I think that this has been the very first bout with the pineapple because it still seems rather intact. Next, it was the same scenario for the heavies with the pineapple, of course.
I'm laughing here. I'm like, is this real life? Because if we tried to do this in the mid realm,
yeah, well, but this is something you can do if you only have 4 fencers on the field.
it's fantastic. I love it. I love it so much.
But you know, I personally, I think the most important thing about fencing is the joy of it. You should have fun.
Well, I mean, on that subject, it's not it. You know, the first kingdom rapier champion that I saw fought in Drachenwald. It was up at Bolton Castle in North Yorkshire. And the castle had a short, like waist-high hedge maze. And so they hid a golden ostrich egg in the waist-high hedge maze, sent everybody in, and whoever came out with the ostrich egg got to be kingdom champion.
Wait, so you guys, you used melee kind of to determine your kingdom champion?
In a hedge maze.
Kind of
In a hedge maze.
In a hedge maze.
That's sort of free-for-all hedge maze. Free-for-all in a waist-high hedge maze, yeah.
Oh, where is this?
Here's another take from another Queen's Champions tournament. There is this is from Drachenwald 20-year celebration, which was held at the castle in Germany. Queen is there on the back.
We want to hear about those castles too, not just Raglan.
Yep. Yeah, you see there is the queen on the background. She's wearing armor. She's not authorized for fencing, but she's on the field with her 3 bodyguards in front of her, trying to protect her from the villains attacking her. So we're quite a lot of times we do the Queen's Champions tournament in this manner, testing the contestants who is the best in protecting Her Majesty.
I love it so much. I love how you said you guys don't do that many scenarios, but it sounds like your Queen's Champion is like the most fantastical melee scenarios I can think of. I'm so ready. I'm like, okay, next plane, if they'd let me.
It's been done in Raglan as well, so that, you know, the prospective champion escorts Her Majesty through the castle, and we'll see how far, if they manage to escort her alive to the tower, while all the villains are trying to either kill the champion, prospective champion, or kidnap the queen.
So we've heard a little bit now about Cudgel War. We've heard about Nakabroda, or the Bread War, because I'm not allowed to speak.
You can call it double wars.
Chinese.
We can call it double wars.
Double wars. Okay, so we've heard about Cudgel, we've heard about double wars, and now we've heard about Raglan. So tell us a little more about these like German events and some of these other castles throughout the bottom part of Europe. How large do these events tend to get, or are these kind of smaller and more localized?
I think there's both.
Mm-hmm.
But it's you know, the 2 really big events in German castles, they were the Drachenwald 10-year celebration and the Drachenwald 20-year celebration. What can I say? They were big.
So
10-year was better. It wasn't as exhaustingly, horribly hot than the 20-year.
So that actually kind of brings me into my next question. Is there a lot of international interaction? Like, how much do you guys actually travel when you're playing in Drachenwald? And have current or even past political things, such as the formation of the EU or maybe even Brexit, affected your ability to travel and play? So let's start with the first, because that's a lot to unpack. Is there a lot of international interaction? Like, how much do you travel to play in Drachenwald, and how much do you see of your neighbors?
Depends on what
Alexandre go first.
Depends on what you mean by you. You know, one is talking about a kingdom where if I want to get to Sweden, my choices are drive for 3 days through 5 countries. I used to be able to take a ferry, which didn't make it a whole lot faster, but would cut it down to 3 countries, or fly over, depending on how you want to count, 2 significant bodies of water. So what you find is that, and I think, and you get some version of this in every kingdom I've ever been. You have the travelers and the non-travelers. And sometimes that's for financial reasons. Sometimes it's just for personality reasons. Some people just don't like traveling. I see Anna quite a bit, comparatively speaking, because Anna travels. She comes to ID. I go to Nordmark and Larne Metze. But we are both in the minority because we are both willing and able to travel. So that's a challenge. I've only been to Double Wars once. And at that Double Wars, Anna can check me if I'm wrong, was I the only ID fencer at that Double Wars? If I wasn't, there were no more than 2 or 3 of us. Because I remember that one tournament that we had, and it was mostly me and Nordmarkers and Larne Metze. So
Vitus must have been there.
Vitus, yes, and of course Vitus. So 2. and Vitus, but Vitus is an exception because at the time he was crown prince.
So I do have kind of a question, and I've talked to Alexandre about this, so I'm a little overly prepped, but it sounds like there's a lot of travel involved in making it even to your overnight events. What does your typical event schedule look like? How do they facilitate this logistical concern of, I drove for 3 days, how is this small SCA event worth my while? So if you don't mind, what does a standard event in Drachenwald look like? Or is there a standard event format?
I don't think there is a standard event. But Alexandre, there was Duncan as well. Here's a picture of
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
yeah, we are about to initiate Vitus's prize play. You are there on the background. There's Duncan, and then there's Vitus.
I brought receipts.
Yeah.
There it is. That's right. That's right. That is pretty much every fencer at Double Wars.
Mm-hmm.
So just count. That is one of the 3 big week-long camping events in the kingdom. That's the full rapier turnout.
Yeah, and you see the forest on the background. That is where we had the forest battle. We went to the forest and fenced there.
That sounds like so much fun.
Fantastic site, great site. Because what you don't see, well, actually, I think you can. Isn't that one of the saunas off in the very far left there?
Oh yes, very left. There is the sauna.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was
The little hobbit hole.
I think there were 2 saunas and 2 hot tubs, but one of the saunas was restricted to the royalty.
Oh, so what? You go fence and then you go sweat it out?
Yes, like civilized people.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we're from Drachenwald. We have a sauna and a castle.
Well, multiple saunas, please.
And multiple castles. Oh my God. Wistric and I are joking. We're like, these overseas kingdoms are magical, mythical places. We're pretty sure this isn't actually the SCA. That's amazing. And it sounds like, though, that you guys, it's funny, you guys are at what I consider to be the root of melee, which is I'm going to go out in the woods, or I'm going to go here and play swords with a bunch of my friends all at once and not really mind what the win condition is. And yeah.
And that's the thing, right? Because it's all, well, at the risk of offending everyone from mid and the east, right? The wars are not about winning the wars. The wars are about having fun. And so the melees are about having fun. So the scenarios can be ad hoc, they can be ridiculous, they can be completely unbalanced because it doesn't matter who wins. Nobody is going to go home from Raglan or Double Wars and brag for the next year about, how they pummeled the mid or pummeled the east and won Penzik, rah, rah, go us. No, the worst that's going to happen is you're going to go home and explain to everyone that those confused flat-siders lost again, as is only right and proper, But, so you improvise. And because you don't necessarily know what you're going to get, you have to improvise sometimes. You can design a beautiful scenario for a 10 on 10, but if only 11 people show up, that's out the window, and you better have a plan B, even if plan B is just, right, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 into the woods. Yay.
Well, and that kind of touches on something I heard Anna say earlier, which is you don't want to bother people with having to list mistress if they're there to play and have fun. So I wonder, is that related at all with the making sure that you have yourself covered, even if you have something planned or don't? It goes out the window.
I took the picture back because I saw on the chat somebody commented about the dresses. I'm very, very happy that it caught the eye. I have for many, many years now taken the liberty of giving out the most unofficial award for the best dressed fencer. And it started a long time ago. But the whole story goes somehow like for the I can't remember, for the love of swordplay and appreciation of fine clothing, and in order to increase the aesthetic value of period fencing, I give out this award. Here I can tell that there are several winners of the awards over the years. Urwald, who is holding the flag, he has won at one year from neck down. Say somebody else won from knees up. Also Vitus in the blue, Crown Prince at the time. He's wearing the outfit that he once won with. Of course, the headgear is missing. In Urwald's case, it doesn't matter at all that he's not wearing his headgear. We have our current queen there in the black skirt. She is a one-time winner, I think, in these particular clothes. Here, second from the right is our current king, wearing a winning costume. Next to him is myself, disqualified to participate. Behind her new majesty is a lady who did not win the competition because her tailor was disqualified. My old clothes done when I was queen. But I think the fellow in the blue trousers next to her has also won this competition. So if you really want to encourage people to dress properly, make up an award.
We're actually laughing because for us, we don't see a lot of fencing dresses because they can get really in the way with some of the larger melee. And I will never win that award because I have a battle bathrobe, which we won't talk about here.
Well, I can say that the hooped skirt was not very practical in the woods.
They're great for tournament fighting, though, because no one can find your legs.
Yes, and it gives a really good air circulation underneath. Air-conditioned fencing dress. I love it.
That's fabulous. So we've spoken about turnout. We've spoken about travel. I guess I kind of want to touch on the second part of my question that I asked earlier, which was, have you guys noticed any difference between like the formation of the EU, making it easier or harder to play, or Brexit? It depends where you want to look in time, making it easier or harder to play, or has it affected you at all because pandemic and the world falling apart before Brexit really even happened? Um, I'm just going to open that up to both of you. Don't talk over each other. Don't make me turn the Zoom around. But I will let you guys answer.
I think it's still too early to see really what effect Brexit is going to have.
Okay.
You know, in the run-up, I haven't seen a whole lot of change because the people that travel and the people that like to travel and the people that can travel do. You know, that's it. It's going to be, I think what's going to have more effect actually is going to be knock-on pandemic effects, because quite frankly, I used to be able to fly to Ireland for 50 quid. You know, that's still ID, but I'm crossing water, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I used to be able to fly to Ireland for 50 quid on Ryanair. Well, Ryanair's got some issues these days, so that's going to be harder. You know, flying to Sweden or flying to Finland, you know, it's more expensive, but it wasn't massively expensive to fly into Helsinki or to fly into Stockholm, because there were a lot of these sort of small regional carriers.
Yeah, 50 quid is less than what I spend on gas getting to Penzance.
Yeah. Well, I mean, well, to be fair, it's you know, it's call it
mm-hmm.
Not just 50 quid, 50 quid one way. So okay, so 100 quid on airfare plus another 20 quid on train fare at each end. But you know, but I can still travel from Norfolk in England to the middle of Ireland round trip for 300 American, something like that. Which, and looping back around to an earlier question, for a lot of Drachenwald events, not all, what I think of as the standard Drachenwald event though, is Friday to Sunday, lodging included. And the lodging included is huge. If you want to run an event which you are expecting to get any sort of kingdom attendance, so not just a kingdom event, I mean, not just a coronation or a crown tournament, but any sort of event where you're expecting to try to get some kind of kingdom attendance, it essentially has to run Friday to Sunday, because you've got to allow travel time. You know, I can't open the site at 9 o'clock and expect Anna to be coming from North Sweden on that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, landing at Heathrow at 4 a.m. in order to get a train to Norfolk so she can be at an event at 8 o'clock. No, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
I open the site at 5 o'clock on a Friday, and I provide, you know, traveler's fare, you know, some sort of dinner and lodging, and there may or may not be any activity. And then, of course, you know, and if you live here for very long, and it is going to be a kingdom event, and the crown is going to be there, you do sort of raise your eyebrow if there's any notification that there's going to be some sort of court on Friday night. You start to wonder about whether or not there's been a vigil room set aside.
Yeah, and then you start to look who is participating. Oh, there's quite a lot of pelicans at this event.
Who's pre-registered?
Yeah, exactly. Who's pre-registered? Who's coming to this one? No, but then the bulk of the activity happens on the Saturday. Breakfast Sunday morning, sometime something rolling on into the day on Sunday, but you expect that most people are leaving in Sunday morning, because again, you know, if I'm in Finland on Sunday morning and I have to be at work in Cambridge on Monday morning, then that means I've got to get up, get an hour, hour and a half, depending on where the site is, maybe 2, to get to the airport, 2 hours before my flight, an hour and a half to 2 hours on the flight, and then a couple hours on the train back home so that I can be ready to be to work, right? But you can't expect people to do that off of a, if the site closes at 9 o'clock on Saturday.
It honestly sounds like some of the logistical problems we heard from LOCAC as well.
Sure.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Well, and in a weird way, when I got started, nearly 40 years ago in the Outlands, you had the same logistical problems. They were just solved in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've told Bruce, but none of the rest of y'all, that I remember going to events where what would happen is we'd get off work at 4:30 or 5 on a Friday, drive 8 hours from Denver to Albuquerque, show up at somebody's house that we might or might not have ever met. And they would have said, yes, come in the back door. Your room is the second door on the left. Show up, crash on the Friday night. Because if I've got an 8-hour drive, I'm not leaving at midnight in order to get to your site at 8 o'clock in the morning, having driven for 8 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So but it was solved with crash space in people's houses rather than having the event site be something with lodging. So over here, what we get is a lot of scout camps, a lot of these castles or manor houses in England in particular have been retooled as not necessarily scout camps, but places which are set up for school groups. They have rooms with bunks. They have bunk houses. Mm-hmm. And so you book those in.
And those are wonderful where you actually have a bed to go to. But then there's the other type of events where you might have just a school, might get the floor. We have a roof and a floor, and whatever you need for your comfort, you bring it yourself.
Yeah.
That's actually
So
awesome.
Anna, especially for you.
Yes, but we are really
travel?
good also in the fact that often we offer loaner gear for those who are coming from away. Locals get an extra mattress or whatever is needed.
So Anna, how do you travel from the far north of Sweden to anything?
Aeroplane, usually.
How close is the nearest airport for you?
No, I have a local airport just 20 kilometers away.
Oh, easy.
It's wonderful. It's a small airport. You get there 40 minutes before the flight leaves, and it's good. But and it's also the fact that any event in southern Finland, southern Arnimetsä, I usually combine it with visiting my folks.
Well, and that's one of those things that, especially for those of us who have not lived here like our entire lives, right, is last time I was in Finland, it was for a coronation outside of Helsinki. Well, we took an extra 3 days in Helsinki. Because that's what you do, right? We hadn't been to Helsinki before, so we flew in, we did the event finishes on Sunday, drive back to Helsinki, drop off the car, and spent another 2 or 3 days in Helsinki before we flew home.
And you might even meet some nice people while you're there.
And who knows, you might bump into random people in a coffee shop in Helsinki.
Imagine that.
It sounds like your employment laws help out too. I'm a little jealous of all the vacation time I'm hearing. But
so
it also helps not having to take 2 weeks every year to go to Penzance.
True.
how do you
it's nothing compared to that.
Sorry.
How do you know if a trip's worth the travel before you make your travel plans? Like, are the activities well advertised? Do people talk about what they're going to, or do you kind of just go and expect?
Yeah, well, if we think about Raglan double wars,
Right.
they are, they happen every year.
Right.
Tradition.
Are there others that you travel to that are not coronation, not crown, or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Every now and then was, yeah. I think the most fun thing was that in ID in Scotland, they decided to have this one fencing event. And they picked the weekend that was the first weekend of my children's autumn break. And my husband's family just happens to live in Scotland. So what do you think, honey? How about we take the break and go to Scotland? We could visit your brother and mother and you and the kids, you could go ahead and I'll just stop over at the event on the weekend first. It was great.
So it sounds a bit like connections kind of play an integral role in some of the travel and being able to hit these events, whether or not you know if there's going to be a bunkhouse or traveler's fair or whatever.
People are very good about that. It is well understood that people, especially overseas, people coming from away, from abroad, utomlands, that they need to know, because it's not just a question of waking up on the Friday and saying, no, yeah, I guess I'll drive out to Philly this weekend. What the hell? No. You need to know months in advance so that you can arrange for your holiday, so that you can arrange for your airline, so that you can figure out how you're going to get from the airport to wherever the event is. And there's usually, and people are often willing to help with that. It's pretty standard for somebody to be responsible for train station pickups.
So I actually like hearing you guys talk about this and hearing about these magical, mythical, happy lock-ins. That's what they call them here in the States, and bunkhouses. How does this affect the culture of the game in the SCA? Are your groups very tight-knit? When you guys go out on the melee field together, can you tell what the other people are thinking? This is something Wistric and I touch on a lot with building a melee program, is the closer people are, the better the quality of teamwork, and sometimes the better quality of the standoffs once you really know someone and you know what they're going to do in that circle of treachery or that pineapple fight. How does this affect your culture as a whole, as a kingdom? Do you actually get to know one another when you're spending the night on Friday? Do you hang out?
Well, it's hard not to bond a little bit if you're all naked in a sauna on a Saturday night. and it is a sort of relatively current joke that you can always tell who the fresh Americans are, because they're the ones who look awkward in the sauna on Saturday night. But it's the population is so small. There are the lynch people, right? There's the Annas, and we talked about Vetus, but there's these other people who get around a lot. And so you go to Double Wars and you see Anna, and Anna because everybody knows Anna. And because you meet Anna introduces you to other people, and then the next thing you know a lot of other people. My first Double Wars, Vetus was supposed to bring my shield because he was driving his trailer. Well, he left my shield on his driveway before driving for 3 days to get to Sweden. So I had no shield. So instead, what happened was I got walked around to some of the other people in Nordmark at site and borrowed a shield. And now I know all of those people. I think Anna and I probably know to look at almost every fencer in the kingdom. Maybe not by name, but to look at, and maybe not well enough to know how they fence, but the community's like that because we are both comparatively well traveled people.
I would say that we are just one big happy family. No, but I mean it, that we are all friends, even if we might never have talked with each other.
Well, and that's definitely.
Oh, look who's there! There's me and me.
Just on the subject of three fairly well traveled people. This is at that point. At that point, she was still queen, wasn't she?
She was queen, yes.
So that's the queen on the left, Anna on the right, me in the middle, at the coronation site in Arnemetsa. That was that last one, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, so that's the one where after this, we went and spent a couple days in Helsinki. I mean, just look at that site, it's beautiful. And you can't see it, but off to the right, there's the sauna.
And the lake seems to be icy.
Yeah. That didn't stop me from jumping into the lake, I would hasten to add.
But this is, the queen got this dress for me to borrow when we were at Council Wars the summer before. And she was fencing in her husband's tunic and was about to go to Pensy right after. She said, "You're queen, you're going to Pensy, you have to have a proper dress. Let's go to my fencing bag and see what we can find."
A proper fencing dress. A proper fencing.
And then it was, and this picture, I think anybody over here who looks at it thinks that instantly, okay, Anna is the one in black and white. But no.
You had a stunt, Anna.
I surprised everybody and wore a kilt. So lost my legs, of course, but
that's fantastic. I love it.
I agree with Anna though. So Drachenwald in general, I think, has a very familial sense, which is not to say there are not certain, sibling rivalries.
So that actually leads me into the next question. So you've told us about this magical, wonderful place with saunas where everyone gets naked after fighting, and it's no awkward unless there's an American who just doesn't really know what's happening. You've talked about your melees and your three major events, Cudgel War, Double Wars, and Raglan, with the awesome sights and all that. So we wanted to kind of touch on, how does this compare to your experiences outside of Drachenwald, if you've been, and if you haven't, you're more than welcome to chime in as the other one answers about how it's different. And man, that sounds weird. I'd love to hear that perspective. If you fought melee, if you've been to events outside of Drachenwald, how did it compare to the normal in Drachenwald?
We know the differences we've seen from our perspective talking to you, but what differences did you see from your native perspective?
From being in it.
Melee in the East, of course. Melee in the East is a whole separate beast because it's so Penzik focused. And because of that, there's such a focus in the East on putting together teams, working together, fighting for victories. And there is a not always healthy sort of spirit of them versus us. And because there is no equivalent in Drachenwald, there is no big melee Penzik thing. That's absent. Teams can be kind of ad hoc. Sometimes it's easy to do a regional split just because you need to do a split somehow. We'll put the Arnemetsons on this side and the Nordmarkers on this side. And then we look at it and say, but that's not fair. So you people go there, you people go there, whatever. So it's much more about, or can be much more about, just trying to set up something that's going to be fun and doing it because it's fun. And then and a lot more lather, rinse, repeat, right? If your biggest melee is 12 people on a side, you don't need 3 hours to do that sweating in the Penzic sun. Instead, you run it and it takes 7 minutes. So you run it again. That didn't work because the same team won twice. Well, that means you two need to switch and we'll run it a third time, because the victory is in a certain sense irrelevant. It's about the fun, it's about the process. And, and when I was growing up in the Outlands, it was the same kind of vibe, because again, there wasn't that sort of driving focused, the point of melee is to win this thing that happens once a year. It wasn't that. We'd have a melee event, but it would still be, we show up, we pick our teams. I mean, I can remember being at events where it was like, okay, here's how we're going to start. If you've got a few people that you want to fight with, go stand next to them. Mm-hmm. Okay, you 4 are standing together and you 5 are standing together. So that's going to be the kernel of our 2 separate teams. Then we got 3 of you, great, teams are even. Here's the scenario, off we go.
So I have a follow-up to that, and I asked this of the Lockhack people as well, because I know here in the Mid-Realm, we travel a lot. We do a lot of driving. Not that we can complain about that to you guys, but we do a lot of driving. There's a lot of like 6+, 7+, 8+ hour drives to get from one end of the kingdom to the other. And something we notice on the melee field, even at smaller events, is people get very upset when you try to split them from their normal groups, because they want to play with the, as I jokingly call it, the sports ball team that they know. They want to be in the same jerseys. Do you guys ever see problems with that? Or is there some sort of like implicit understanding that if you're going to an event, you may not get to play with the people you see on a regular basis? Or is that even a concern, considering how the travel works, whether you have 2 people from Insulae Draconis at an event or just 1? So I'm going to open that up to Anna, if you want to go for it.
I think it really doesn't matter. I think the only scenario where it matters really that I can't swap sides is when it's about the bread and the butter. I could never, ever compete for the heretic flatsiders.
Well, but that's understandable. I mean, that just makes sense.
But apart from, because that is a real war. It is a really serious war. But everything else, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and just to add to that, there isn't that. So there really isn't that sense of sports ball team, because in very few circumstances are there enough people from any given shire for there to be a sports ball team. It would be, I mean, I suppose you could do doubles figure skating if you're lucky. but like we said, I mean, like that picture at Double Wars, the entire Insulae Draconis contingent was 3 of us, and that's none of us from the same shire, 1 from Scotland, 1 from, at that point, I think I was still living in Yorkshire, or I might have been down in Norfolk, and 1 down sort of South Coast. We don't practice together regularly. I mean, they're my friends, but it's not like these are the guys that I know how they're going to break in any given fighting scenario because we've been fighting together in melee practices for years. No, it's just not a thing. There is a thing over here for the heavies, which is called the Oxford Rolls, which is a tournament, a three-part tournament for the shires, where the shires compete against each other. But even there, sometimes the shires are forming ad hoc alliances and all that. And there has occasionally been some chit-chat about trying to get something similar for the rapier side, some sort of inter-shire competition, but it hasn't gotten any traction yet.
And in the heavy side, they have this 5-man melee, whether you have to have a 5-man group, and the groups that fight each other. And I think that is a little bit into the way you actually, it is important who you are fighting with. But I think basically it's when we do a melee where we see what we got, and then we figure out how to get most joy out of that.
Yeah.
Hey,
And a lot of times,
you know, I really have to hijack the picture again. This is not a melee scenario, but you know, we see what we have, and then we play with it. This is a local area here. It's a demo event mostly, or our own event. In the daytime, it's a demo, so there's mundane people. And there were these wonderful little horses for the children that you could pull your children on, and of course we had to try them and do a proper tournament. It was great fun.
Well.
And here I can show just that sometimes we do the girls versus boys, and another one, and if it's lucky, it ends like this.
But I also noticed there wasn't that much of a difference in the numbers on the sides. Just from a cultural, like, what are the gender?
Not always. I think this is a pair. This must be the girls against the boys. I had another one here as well, and this is definitely not much different in the numbers. Sometimes it's lucky like this, not always.
I apologize. The combination of that picture and the description and everything, and I had to turn my camera off because I was laughing too hard. That's amazing. That looks so. What event was that again?
Pardon me?
What event was that? Was that a particular event?
It's our local one here up in northern Sweden. We call it Hägnen. It's a semi-annual nowadays. It's basically, it started as an demo event. So that during the day it is open to the public to come there, and we can have our own little tents there, and in the evenings it's just for the fun. So during the day we do the tourneys and all to entertain the public. And in the entertain the public, I have to tell one of my favorite tournaments is that to have a group of minstrels playing music. And then we as fencers, we fence to the music, and the public gets to give style points. You know, you get points if you manage to time your stabbing into the music, and really great.
But a lot of times at our melees, because the point is to have fun, you know, you start out by saying, okay, we've got 4 mods, right? 2 on each side. That's how we start. And we're going to split this way, and we're going to split that way, and we're going to split this way. Because, you know, sure, if you put all of the mods on one side, they'll probably win, but nobody has any fun. So what's the point? Now I'm going to hijack because I've got a picture.
I love how they're taking the question that I have and they're just running with it, even though I haven't asked it quite yet. But this is setting me up perfectly for my final question of the afternoon.
I mean, yeah,
so this picture
makes our job easy.
is at a crown tournament. It's the morning after crown tournament, and we had a fencing practice. And I would just like to point out that is, you know, at this point, I think only one of them is actually not a youth fencer, but we had 4 youth fencers out at a crown tournament. All of them remarkable young women, out there learning how to kill their mother. So, and I just love that. I just love that picture because they're all just out there doing their thing. And you know, that's a fencing practice in Drachenwald.
It kind of seems like that's an event in Drachenwald too. We just go out there and we do our thing and we make it work with what we have.
And we have fun to do it. Uh-oh, Anna's got a picture. Oh yeah, there we go.
No.
Awesome.
You got to start them that young.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, talking about killing your mother. This is my youngest one a few years back.
Oh,
Nice.
We won't tell her you were sharing her photo.
It's a he.
Oh, he's
my baby.
Their photos. You were sharing their photos. We're
was
not
talking-
even their first date. But so this actually sets me up perfectly for the question that I have, and I'm going to kind of pit you guys against each other unless you agree, but then maybe you should argue. Which you've told us about all sorts of really cool events, whether they be local or large or just your practice with a couple of SMSs being like, we're getting together. But what's the coolest event out there? And if Wistric and I had to choose one event to come to, what should we come visit? Like what event should we make time for? Whether it's Double Wars or Cudgel Wars or Raglan or some local demo in the middle of nowhere, we're all ready. Like we want to hear what we should buy our plane tickets for tomorrow.
It actually all of the events they have their points, and it's really up to what you really prefer. I can say so that Raglan, of course, you can't beat Raglan's setting. Being in an actual castle, it's one good thing. Then we have Double Wars. Double Wars I think it's the biggest event in Drachenwald. There's a lot of things going on. So basically there you can do whatever you want to and get it done. But I think Cudgel War it's a relaxed, such fun, relaxed event that, I really can't tell you which one I'd recommend the most. But once you pick the event, please let us know so that I can make it to the same event.
Absolutely. That way you can be really sad at my fencing clothes.
We'll fix that.
Don't embarrass me, Bruce.
I'll be prepared. I'll bring a couple extra dresses.
So I have not yet been to Cudgel Wars, so I can't speak to Cudgel. What I would say is that for you guys, in particular, specifically, Raglan would be awesome because I can hook you up. But Raglan is camping only, or you have to get a hotel offsite or whatever.
Yeah. In
Double Wars,
you can get a bed.
Double Wars, not only can you get a bed, but usually there's also a meal plan. So you can show up, have a place to sleep, have all of your meals taken care of, and not have to worry about that. Whereas at Raglan, somebody has to take care of where you're going to sleep and where you're going to eat. So for you guys, because people, what knows guys, we could take care of that for you.
What? You're my adopted father? What?
But for a random person who's looking for a week-long event in Drachenwald, Double Wars probably has a slightly lower bar to entry because you don't need to worry about getting a tent or arranging for a hotel or figuring out how you're going to eat.
Is that the one with the sauna?
Everything in Nordmark or Arnemetsa is going to have a sauna, or I will know the reason why.
Just Wistric, the look on Wistric's face was how I felt internally, which is what? Magical.
Council has the lake right next to the sauna.
So you
Well-
can like jump in the icy lake or into the sauna thing.
And so does
Not icy.
No, oh, not at that one.
so does that site where they've had crown tournament and then coronation also. Lake, and that's so 12th night / New Year coronation up in Finland, frozen lake.
Attacks.
Right? I'm like, I can't tell if it's been the stress of this week, but I'm like, so how would it be to immigrate to Drachenwald?
Like I said, Stockholm was a wonderful place. I enjoyed it. Especially because I got off the plane super jet lagged, and there was like a coffee shop on every corner in Gamlestaden. And I was walking from like the train station to my hotel, and I stopped in every coffee shop between the train station and my hotel. It took me like 3 hours, but hey, latte? Oh, thanks, great.
So this guides me kind of perfectly because I want to keep talking about immigrating, but let's finish the episode and get it wrapped up and then and go there. So if you've ever watched one of our episodes, we end every episode with the same kind of query prompt for our guests, which is your best melee no shit there I was story. So whether it's fighting over what side the butter goes on or getting thrown over the side of an actual bridge into a moat, we want to hear the best melee story you have pertaining to our topic, which is Drachenwald. So big, wide open topic. And I am going to let Anna go. No,
Anna.
Oh, well, maybe we'll prompt this while you guys think, and then I'll toss a coin, and heads is Anna, tails is Alexander. But we should be coming back fairly regularly for those of you who are tuning in to doing Fighting the Worlds on a more bi-weekly basis after our little pause.
We got like a schedule out through April planned. So this amount of foresight is weird, and it might actually portend production value.
Maybe we'll think about it. We'll think about it.
Obviously.
But I hope you guys will join us next week for our episode, probably going to be breaking some scenarios, or at least talking about how to break scenarios before playtesting. I'm not sure if that's the actual episode we have planned. Wistric?
We're working on it. It might be a little bit of that whose scenario anyway. It might be a little bit of make some scenarios, test some scenarios.
You did not invite me to talk about how to break scenarios.
We can't figure out what time you're awake.
Vaguely insulted.
But anyway, so now that I've given them both time to think, we hope you'll join us for our next episode. And we're going to open with and it is do no harm on my coin. So we're going to start with Alexander.
Well, okay, I've got 3 melee stories, but in fact, only one of them is Drachenwald. Because one of my favorite melee memories of all time is Bruce and me getting in trouble. We get to.
You can tell that story after you tell your Drachenwald story, and Anna tells her Drachenwald story.
This is the Drachenwald episode.
And you can tell it after that, but don't get me in trouble yet.
I think maybe after we're not recording anymore.
No, it's not that bad.
No, it's not. No, it's not. They didn't say we couldn't until
after we did it. No, Drachenwald story. Drachenwald story.
Well, I think it was that melee for the championship up at Bolton Castle, where we've got, because it's Drachenwald, you've got an extremely random collection of fencers, and we've got this lovely, weird little eccentric hedge maze, and this golden egg about this big, and all the fencers, go out and look away while someone goes in and hides the egg in the middle of the hedge maze, the little hedge thing. And then we all go through, and you've got some people who are focused with laser-like intensity on getting to the egg, and other people who are just like leaning over hedges and stabbing at anything that goes by. People dropping down and crawling on the hedge, crawling on their knees so that they're underneath the hedge so you can't see them. And just everyone having just a great, great time. And I get completely sidetracked over at one end of the hedge maze with, oh God, I forget what it was, but it was one of the other sort of higher end fencers. And we're over at one end of the hedge maze, unable to retreat or advance because, of course, it's a hedge maze. We can only move side to side. So we're like, and we're doing that while one of the junior fencers is over there holding the egg, moving slowly towards the exit, while we are paying absolutely no attention whatsoever to what's going on in the actual nominal scenario victory condition. We just having a great old time though. And then finally we catch a glimpse of her and it becomes a sprint. And we stop fighting each other and we're both sprinting through the hedge maze, trying to cut her off before she gets out with the egg and the prize, and failing.
And that's why we pay attention to the objective on the melee field.
That's right.
He's down.
But we all had a great time, which is the point. We all had fun.
All right. And now for Anna.
I am really, I have two stories, and I'm thinking, do you want the one where I actually win or the one where I laugh myself to death?
Number two.
Yeah,
Probably number
usually
two.
I had a great time and died
Laughing is always
horribly.
good. Then this is Cudgel Wars. I believe it might have been the famous pirate tournament, this time without the pineapple. And it was a weird scenario. I think there was a table and there was a bench and somebody was sitting in the tavern drinking whatever, and Paul O'Brien decided to lay claim on the bench. So he was sitting there on the bench, and this is my bench, and of course I had to challenge him for the bench. So I know, no, it's my bench. And I charge him, and being the clever woman I am, I obviously parried with my forehead or did something equally stupid, in which case I died dead flat on my stomach on the bench, and with my dying breath whispered, "It's my bench, I bleed on it." And before Paul goes and fights other people, he takes his foot and pushes me off the bench, and I roll over and land on my back on the floor. And he says, "It's my bench." And I am just bursting to laughter, and he asks, "Shall I help you up?" I said, no, I'll just stay here and laugh for a while.
I'm picturing a gentleman like taking his leg and just being like, "Mine." That's awesome.
It was really nice, fun. Losing the bout, but yeah, laughing too much to get up from the ground.
It's okay. Those are
was more fun than
better
it was.
stories.
That's a story.
Those are the better stories. They tend to be. All right. Do you want to?
We can do a reconstruction of the next circle of treachery. So I'm not going to tell the story.
Oh, I was about to ask.
You get to relive it.
I was asking for the winning story next before Alexander.
Everybody wanted. Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody will then know I will never win the circle of treachery again.
No, because I will make sure.
You're going to broadcast
circle,
across the SCA.
Oh, okay, well, we can take the circle treachery then. You know how it begins now, everybody against each other. And sometime in the beginning of it, I just decided to sit down. And of course, everybody thinks that she's safe. She's on the ground. We don't have to worry about her. We just worry about each other now. And there was two fencers left and me sitting in far end. These two are fighting right next to the royals on the other end. And one of them dies. Whereas the other one turns to the royalty and starts to pose and be very sure of himself. At which point I get up and gently walk behind of him and place my dagger over his shoulder and say, kill from behind. I thought you were dead. Oh no, I was just resting.
Oh, my best melee
Yeah,
story.
this is yes, you know, I am a very treacherous person in many ways.
That is amazing. It's okay. She's told her Drachenwald story. You've told your Drachenwald story. You can tell other melee stories if you have your best no shit there I was story for the class.
Well, this is marginally Drachenwald melee related, because we do talk about melee, and we discussed, you know, melee protocol and how, you know, if you're dead, you know, take your swords by the blade, hilts up to illustrate that you're dead, walk off. You know, you can do, you know, that's all fine. But you don't have to act like a constant threat all the time. You know, this is Anna's story, right? She's still alive. She's just not acting like a threat. And so I have explained over and over again to them, and Bruce might remember this, how there were melees at Penzig where what I would do is I would set up, and then I would just sort of drop my tips, walk sort of halfway through the line, between the lines, have a glance, and if no one was looking at me, turn around, and then back into the enemy line. Back through the enemy line, and then start slaughtering the enemy line with death from behind. Because as long as I didn't act like I was dangerous to them, they would have just ignored me. And there was one where I managed to do something similar to that. It was a year where they had a weird triangle-shaped field. And I got through the line, walked around, and I remember literally standing there with my dagger and tapping somebody, and he turned around and saying to him, "Are you dead?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Yes." And he moved on, and I moved on to the next one. So, you know, we do discuss the whole threat recognition problem. You know, fast twitch catches people's eyes. If you just kind of gently move around, you can get away with murder. Awesome.
Yeah, I wondered where I learned that from and got in trouble with it for.
Well, I mean, I said for years, guys, why are you letting me get behind your lines? I'm 6'3" and I'm wearing purple. Why are you letting me get behind you? Okay, but here's the Bruce story. So we're at one of the castle fights at Penzig. I forget which one it was.
It was La Rochelle.
Oh, was it La Rochelle? Okay, so it's at La Rochelle. And there's somebody up in one of those windows up there being annoying. So clearly this, and you can't quite reach him because the windows are high. So clearly the solution is for Bruce to stand on my shoulders. Made perfect sense. We got her up there.
I was a lot smaller at that time.
You are still a delicate flower, my daughter. So we got her up there, and we're just about set to clean out that window when the marshal said, "You can't do that." Why not?
We had a rules book out by his fencing case because this was still at the point where I was like throwing my gear in with his gear because I was so new and fresh to the fencing field. We had a rules book and we double checked before we did this.
But But because we are good peoples, when the marshal said, I don't think it's safe, you can't do that, we said, okay.
We pouted at him. We did pout at him.
But we stopped doing it. We did not argue with the marshal on the melee field. Young fencers out there, do not argue with your marshals on the melee, no matter how wrong they are.
Senior fencers too.
Senior fencers should know better. Senior fencers really don't argue with your marshals because you're setting a bad example for the junior fencers.
So while I have you here, Alexander, and I apologize, Anna, for jumping in, I've told this story a couple of times on Fighting the World, but I've never had you there to like back me up on it, about my favorite melee story of all time, which was 100 Minutes War in the East. Yeah. So, and I've used this to outline a couple of points, a couple of points in various episodes about building esprit de corps, about why melee fighting isn't tournament fighting, and why sometimes your biggest shit kickers aren't necessarily going to be the best melee fighters, because sometimes they forget how to have fun. And a lot of melee and a lot of understanding melee tactics is about both having fun and also being effective, but usually the funnest things are the most effective, like going into people's backlines. So my favorite 100-Minute War melee story of all time was Alexander, who is in my bottom left corner. I don't know where he is on Wistric, who's recording. Alexander won the captaincy for 100 Minutes War, which they have a tournament first thing in the day to determine who's going to be the captains of each melee team. It's usually about 30 fighters, 30 to 40 rapier fighters. And then the end of the day is spent doing melees out in the woods. It's a giant woods battle. So Alexander comes in second to Wyatt, or you both won captaincy, Wyatt and Alexander, and Wyatt wanted to build a winning team. So Alexander selected me first because I was his cadet, and that is only right and proper. And then Wyatt started selecting all of the shit kickers, the 6 foot tall, gangly men who are great skirmishers. They're great tournament fighters.
They are great tournament fighters, is the important.
They are great tournament fighters. They are not necessarily great melee fighters. And I watched Alexander go down the line and select every new fencer and or woman under 5'5", which was all of us, because there were no tall women on the field that day. Selected each and every one of us and went, okay, we're gonna go kill them all and take the flags. And it was just a gaggle of giggling women who were having just the best time of their lives, and Alexander in the middle going, all right, there's a flag, let's go get it. And it was just 10 women giggling and having a blast. And we come across 1 or 2 of these good tournament fighters at one time because they were gonna take all the flags at once. And we just, tiny women go, take the flag to the next one. Tiny women go, take the flag to the next one. And these men were just completely emasculated by a bunch of giggling girls, and Alexander, who of course has the hair and can do the toss with the rest of us.
That's right, sorry. I forgot. Got to do the fan service.
There you go.
Yeah, no, that is exactly right. Something there was I don't remember, but I seem to remember that whoever it was on the other side, or somebody on the other side, annoyed me, about, oh yeah, I'm just gonna pick this monster team and blah 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 blah, and it annoyed me. And yeah, I mean, we had a team that consisted of a couple of people who've been around for a while and an awful lot of young fencers, new fencers, and I think I had, if not every woman on the field, almost every woman on the field.
You had every woman on the field.
On the team.
The other side who was selecting did not select any women, and part of your annoyance was something that happened in the tournament to me.
Oh yeah.
I have a little bit of a similar story, but it's from the heavy side. I wasn't fighting myself, but my husband was. A long time ago, he was rather very young, probably just a squire. And it was at Double Wars. And he had a little group of complete newbies with him. He was the leader of the group. And on the other side, there was this great duke from the West with all of his household, tough guys, not to be beaten, especially not by a real little tiny newbie group. For some reason, they retired to the monastery. Now, the monastery was a building which, if you destroyed it, you get minus points. And yeah, they retired to the monastery. And this tiny little group of newbie Vikings decided to, okay, now we have them back in the monastery, we're not letting them out. You there, start throwing in torches. And it took a couple of torches when the marshal standing there started grinning and laughing and counting. 1, 2, 3 torches were coming in. And okay, the monastery has been burnt down now. You are all dead. And they went, but you can't do that. Why not? We are Vikings. We don't care about a bloody monastery. Of course we torch it. So this is the story how the little group of complete newbies killed great Sir Duke and all of his household at war.
Those are sometimes the best stories.
And the fun thing is that years later, the torch guy became my husband's squire. And it was only after he had become the squire that they actually made the connection that,
Nice.
you were the leader, or you were the torch guy.
Nice. There was a big East Kingdom Melee event that I won the coveted title of most treacherous swine at, and it was a big Melee event, and for that one, they had a bunch of torches so that you could burn buildings for victory points or whatever. And of course, my immediate question was, can I set people on fire with the torches? And they said, well, yes. To which I said, and this is something that I have been teaching the fencers of ID, if you've got a complicated scenario and you ever hear me utter the words, good to know, be afraid, be very afraid. So yeah, okay, great. Oh, and as a quick aside point, it takes 5 torches to light a building on fire. Okay. If a person is on fire, how many torches do they count as? 3. Good to know. My side won because I convinced 2 of my friends on my team, 2 of my friends and teammates, to run into the building and light themselves on fire. That's 6. Foosh.
And now we have an example for our breaking the scenario.
There you go. That's what I'm saying. You didn't invite me to breaking the scenarios. A little offended.
We'll get you on the list for the next one.
It's a little after your bedtime.
So yeah, okay. For breaking scenarios, tired and loopy is not necessarily a disadvantage.
Except I think it'd be more like 4 a.m. your time because our normal hours are 9 p.m.
Okay, well, 4 a.m. is not much before my usual rising time anyway.
Well, we will see what we can do, but you might have to get active on the Facebook so we can add you to the rest of the group. I know.
All right.
I know.
Yeah, but the 100-minute story, yeah, absolutely. We took a team of underexperienced relative newbies, and this is key for Melee as well, and this is one of the reasons why good tournament fencers and/or people who think they are hot stuff don't necessarily make good Melee fighters, is if the ego gets in the way, the ego can get in the way of the objective. Yeah, we're going to put 2 guys on every flag because they'll be able to hold it. Not so much. I got 10 people. I don't care how good you are. I got 10 people, all of whom are willing to stab at the same time. Ready, go.
It really was like cake. But okay, so we want to wrap it here because we are at our 2-hour mark and it makes it easier to upload and keeps it semi-bite-sized chunks for the people joining us later. I wanted to thank Lydia for joining us as our single live viewer today. I know the hours were weird.
And asking lots of questions, thank you.
And getting her new favorite rule story. But I also wanted to give a heartfelt thanks to both of our panelists. Anna, I can't wait to stab you. And I can't wait to have you try to dress me because, as Alexandra will tell you, it is very hard to make me a pretty princess.
It has been tried before.
Yeah, that is the work in progress. And Alexander, as always, it's good to see my father.
you know, Bruce, you should take the next panel like talking about being pretty. Not as much as what you do with the sword, as long as you look pretty while doing it.
You know, we might have to take you up on that offer to speak at that panel because we do have one in mind for talking about heraldry and unit cohesion on the field, and having the singular I just want to look as pretty as possible person as kind of the foil might be really excellent.
You know, I can tell you that my motto is
Tabards aren't pretty.
Is not useless with sword, but well dressed for nothing.
And there is actually a Drachenwald story about how heraldry will get you killed, involving Raphael. Do you remember Raphael, Anna?
Yes, I remember Raphael. But I haven't heard this story. I have to get back to you.
Yeah. Well, he showed up at Pennsic, and we were on a 5-man melee team. Well, and I had beaten him in the Pennsic Rapier Champs when he was wearing, I think, his personal livery.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got into, and then we got into the 5-man melee teams, and he had on the Drachenwald champion livery. So I didn't recognize him, looked away, and he greased me. And then one of our other hot sticks was on the other side, saw that I was dead, ran around to my side to cover, looked away for a second, and Raphael greased him.
So this is also, you can do it, you know, you just put your old dress on somebody else and make a new dress for yourself.
Well, and the punchline is afterwards, Rhiannon was like, didn't you recognize who that was? Oh, no. He was wearing the Drachenwald Rapier Champions tabard.
I have a fun story about putting someone in my clothes, but that can wait until we're done recording.
Once we are at the pretty panel, right?
Oh, it wasn't pretty. It was my battle bathrobe when I was Queen's Champion of the Mid-Realm. So it had little dragons all over it. It was very shiny.
That makes it pretty.
With some trim.
That makes it pretty.
Yeah, trim, shiny. Yeah.
I'll take that as your blessing. All right, so we're going to wrap up the recording here. I'll let Wistric do the outro.
Thank you all again. Yeah, this has been a blast. And I can't wait until Americans are allowed back into Europe. So until then, thank you.